So tonight's rules are we are going to take turns posing questions to the candidates. The candidate who gets the question will have 60 seconds to answer. Stephanie Paulino will be keeping time, and you'll hear a little bell, and I'll give you a motion to finish up. And each other candidate will get 30 seconds to respond. At the end of the debate, candidates will have 90 seconds to give final statements. I'll briefly introduce our panel of reporters. Stephanie Paulino, as you heard, is from La Voz Hispana. We have Uma Ramaya for WNPR, Abby Smith, the City Hall reporter at the New Haven Register, and Nzinga Shani from One World. And you recognize her, I'm sure, for many years on Citizens Television and other public access channels. So the first question, if we can start the clock once I ask, is for Anthony Dawson. Mr. Dawson, it's your first morning in office as mayor. Your chief of staff rushes in with a report. A package containing anthrax has been discovered in the stacks at the public library on Elm Street. What do you do?
Well, the first thing I would do, I'd just like to say thank you for this opportunity by all the sponsors and the young people that's here being chaperones at the school, and I'd like to thank the principal for hosting this event. The first thing I would do, Paul, is I would call the fire chief, because basically he's in charge of the city when those kinds of incidents happen. And we will be in contact with Yale University Police, because they are the ones with New Haven Police that have a bomb squad or the body that can handle those kinds of anthrax problems. And I would let them manage it like they are in charge, which are the leaders of the fire department and the police departments, to handle the situation.
Thank you very much. John Stefano.
Sure. I'd like to say hello to everybody that came out tonight, to our hosts for doing this, and Judy Puglisi does a great job at this school here, and it's good to be here with my colleagues. Congratulations on making the ballot to each and every one of you. You can tell the breadth of my affection. I guess that isn't the terrorism that concerns me. The thing that concerns me is what we saw in Chapel and Day last night, the kind of senseless violence, particularly among our young people. I think the issues that we face about supporting young people and the challenges and choices they're making is really the more prominent and likely threat we face.
Thank you. And I'm going to ask everyone to speak up a bit for the folks in the back. I'm told they're having a little trouble hearing. Clifton Graves, what are you going to do in this crisis?
Well, I too want to first thank you. First, thank all the co-sponsors, the Register, the Independent, La Voz, Gracias, NBC 30, One World, NNPR, and all the folks who are here, all our citizens and fellow residents who are here this evening, Ms. Puglisi, and the students, Mahogany and Duran, for being hostesses and hosts for us this evening. And if I could, Paul, and I know you can take this against my time, Stephanie, since we're in this building, I think it's only appropriate on this occasion, in echoing the mayor's sentiments, that one, we take a minute, all of us, and pause for a moment of silence for not only the families of the 21 victims of homicides in our community thus far this year, but also for Dr. Julia Hamilton, who just recently passed, who was a former member of the school board here in New Haven, an educator at Southern Connecticut State University, and an administrator here at New Haven Hospital, as well as for New Haven Register, Dave Solomon, a great sports columnist and writer. So let's have a moment of silence as a community, because this is really not about us up here. It's about you, and about us coming together as a family and as a greater New Haven community, and showing respect for those who served us and those who've lost their lives. So if we could have a moment, Paul.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to ask everyone to speak up, because I'm told the people in the back are having trouble hearing.
Okay.
Jeffrey Karikas, this crisis hits, what are you going to do?
I agree with Tony. I'm not going to micromanage any department. We have that now, and that's created a lot of problems. I think that my concern is also the 21 homicides. We had 16 to 20-year-olds that are involved with this that have been grew up under the mayor's administration. A lot of those kids are the kids who've dropped out, and we've had unacceptable dropout rates. These are unacceptable circumstances, and I'm concerned that we need to deal with the 21 homicides that we've had here in the city. Clearly, the approach that we've undertaken is not working. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Lee, there's anthrax in the public library. What are you going to do?
First, I'd like to thank everyone for coming out. It's interesting this evening to have so many people running for mayor. It shows that the energy is back in the city of New Haven. for the mayor's race, and I hope that it turns out to be a great one. I just want to say I kind of agree with some of the things Tony said, that I will be contacting our leaders in our fire department, our police department. But one of the things I also will be contacting is Dr. Mayor, make sure that this problem that we have doesn't have to seek over until our education, where it affects our children, and make sure that everybody in New Haven is safe.
Thank you very much. Steffi Paulino, your next question is directed to Mayor DeStefano.
Okay. The Wilbur Cross High School Politics Club was disbanded this past school year after students conducted a downtown march against school funding cuts, and the school student council election was canceled after the protest leader won. Do you support what happened? Do you see a role for the mayor to get involved?
Thank you for the question. I support the principal in those instances, managing the school. Cross student body, it's a vibrant student body of 1,300 kids. I think the principal has done the right thing to reach out to those young people and engage them about their participation. In fact, Dr. Mayo and I met with them and some of the groups that organized with them shortly after that incident, encouraged them to stay involved and engaged, that it was consistent with the kinds of expression we want to see from our young people. Dr. Mayo met again with some of those kids yesterday, as I recall. So I think it's important to do that. At the same time, I agree with Jeffrey. We shouldn't micromanage. But at the same time, there's a way to reach out to these kids and message to them directly, and that's what I did.
Thank you. And I'm going to remind people to please try to speak up for the folks in the back. Clifton Graves, what's going to be your role as mayor when that happens?
Well, first of all, I think there was a poor decision, poor judgment on the part of the administrators across. Some of them have a great deal of respect for. I had a chance to sit down and talk with Isaiah Lee, one of the leaders of that group, in the aftermath of that decision. And I was so impressed with this young man, with his talent, with his skills, with his intellect, and his interest in being involved. So we need to encourage our young people, especially when you juxtapose that against the 21 murders that we've had. We have young people who want to participate, want to be involved. We need to encourage that, not discourage that. I said it publicly. I thought it was a form of bullying. Yeah.
Thank you. Jeffrey Karikis, what would you do as Mayor Karikis in that role?
Sure. Again, I think we shouldn't micromanage the principals, but I wonder if democracy is being squashed across the city. We've seen it. I got kicked out of City Hall for trying to talk to people in line. We have. I'm sure if the principal got the message, when people talk to the press, they lose their jobs here in the current mayor. So we have to allow the principals to do what they need to do in their schools. I do support that, but I do think we need to support democracy in the city.
Thank you. Robert Lee.
Repeat that question again, please.
The Wilbur Cross High School Politics Club was disbanded this past school year after students conducted a downtown march against school funding cuts, and the school student council election was canceled after the protest leader won. Do you support what happened? Do you see a role for the mayor to get involved?
I gotta say, I give a lot of respect to the students. I think it's great what they did, because we need to see more kids come out and stand up for what they believe today. And I admire them for what they did. There are tough decisions that are being made in school cuts. I understand Dr. Mayor have to make tough decisions. It's one of the decisions I still fight today. If I become mayor, I'm gonna bring baseball back into the schools, because I believe baseball is an option that gets kids into college. And while we don't have it today, I think it's a big problem.
Thank you very much. Tony Dawson.
Well, those students were just like I was 35 years ago when I marched on Bart Guida because the air conditioner wasn't working at Lee High School. So I sympathize with them. I've done it before. I think it's great leadership, and hopefully that young man that led the charge and those folks that are part of leadership will come and join us or join me as mayor to run the city, to serve on various boards and commissions, that we can get a transparent city, as well as have the young people involved in making decisions that affect this city and move it in a good direction.
Thank you. Uma Ramaya has a question for Clifton Graves.
Mr. Graves, you have strident anti-violence initiatives in your platform.
Yes.
What makes you more capable of tackling this problem than the gentleman sitting next to you? And please be specific about that.
Keith Cook-Ladder.
I asked Mr. Graves, I said he has strident anti-violence initiatives in his platform. What makes him more capable of tackling this problem than the gentleman sitting next to him? And I also asked him to be specific about that.
Well, first of all, to address violence and public safety issues requires a multifaceted, multi-tiered approach. The first thing, of course, as we talked about in our platform, we have to address the issue of community policing, more aggressive policing, more police on the streets. We need to reassign or redeploy policemen as currently situated. That's first thing. Second thing, we need to address the issue of the proliferation of guns in our community. I had a sixth grader in the mentoring program we run at Lincoln Bassett say to Mr. Graves, I can walk out of here at Lincoln Bassett and I can get a gun quicker than I can get a library book. Something's wrong with that. Something's wrong with that if that's happening in our community. So we need to be more aggressive, working in conjunction with the state police, the ATF, the Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms Division of the federal government, as well as local police in terms of addressing that. But on top of that, we have to address the issue of parenting. The community has to come together. We have to come together and address this, embrace this issue of violence and public safety. Parents have to become more responsible. Most of our parents are, but there's some who aren't. And let's be clear on that. So we have to figure out a way by bringing...
You can finish the sentence.
Bringing the community together, churches, synagogues, mosques, and those agencies, entities in our community to bring parents together to take some ownership of this issue.
Thank you. Jeffrey Karikas, you have 30 seconds.
Again, these are 16 to 20-year-olds who grew up under this mayor's administration. Recently been touting the involvement of federal and state agencies. That should have happened a long time ago. I wonder why it hasn't. I think partly, again, because the mayor likes to micromanage, doesn't want other people telling him what to do. We need a new chief of police. We need cops to come back home, live here, be real community policing, have cops live here in New Haven. And I have beat cops telling me that, we need a detective bureau that solves more than just one murder out of the 21 that we've had. We need also to do a pilot program at Hill House, making sure that we have youth center and youth involvement here. We have schools that are beautiful, but let's use them.
Robert Lee.
The violence that we have in our city, I believe, is a part of our history being taken away from us. When I was a young man, I think some of the people in here, I'm 54 years old, you can understand what I'm talking about. We had teen centers, Q houses, we had place to go. These things were taken away from us. I talk to young kids today on the street, and I say to them, you can't know what our history was because it was taken away. If I become mayor, that history will come back. We can't control all the violence. I'm not going to sit and tell you I can stop all the killing, but if I bring back some of our history, it will start to heal the process of the violence. We will never stop it all. I will start the healing and get with the young people and begin to curb this bad thing that had happened.
Thank you. Tony Dawson.
Yes, we cannot turn this city of New Haven around without addressing the fact that this administration has allowed it to become the fourth most dangerous city in America. With that in mind, our children are going through a lot of trauma in this city. Just today, while I was practicing for today, I had to go outside and be a mentor to two young men that was threatening to kill each other right in the street. It's all over, it's everywhere, it's all four corners of the city. We have to pull together with various sources to help young people understand how to just manage their problems without killing each other.
Thank you. The next question is from Abby Smith oh, yes? Excuse me? Oh, you didn't get, I'm sorry, maybe to Stefano.
I know there's a lot of us, I know we all look alike. So short and long term, I think the best place long term is the school district, and I think our investments in pre-kindergarten, full-day kindergarten, and frankly college going is important. Second thing I'd say to this thing is that I think if you look at this, reentry population, narcotics is key to this. And the reason why Frank Lamone is chief of the department is because he was head of the organized crime unit in the city of Chicago. And that work was clearly present in New Hallville with the R2 takedown that we've arrested 47. And Jeff, if you're going to say things about me, fair game, I get it. The Detective Bureau and the officers there work really hard. They're competent and professional. And if you don't want to have respect, if you don't want to respect me, I think that's fine. I don't got a problem with that. But respect these officers who put their lives on the line. And maybe it's because I've been in the hospital when 3 of them have been killed, and you haven't had that experience. But show a little respect and dignity for them.
Okay, we went, I think to be fair, because we went over on that response. Do you want 15 seconds to respond?
Sure. I'm telling you what beat cops told me. They came up to me and said, They're disappointed in getting the crime solved. They feel frustrated with the chief. They had a vote of no confidence in the chief. There's a guy who spends part of the week in Chicago. I've also heard you apparently have been telling people that you're frustrated with him. So, I mean, I think that there's concerns that we need a chief that's here in New Haven.
Okay, and John, you want another 15 minutes to respond? Okay, I just want to be fair. You want an hour? No, okay. Sorry about that. Abby, did you ask? No. Abby Smith has a question for Jeffrey Karikas.
Hi, Mr. Karikas. One of the city's current budget year has several $1 million in savings designated to come from labor negotiations. If those don't come through, or if any number of other things go wrong, the city could easily be facing another deficit at the end of the year. If that's the case, would you raise taxes? And if not, where would you make cuts?
Being a Democrat is about empathy and responsibility. I think it's really important to think about what our priorities are. You know, is it $1 million in an entourage that follows you around, or is it actually making sure that kids who are protesting, they have books in the classroom from Cross High School? You know, one of the ways I do it is we have to spend to our priorities. If you're a family that makes a two-income family go down to one-income family, you have to make some serious choices. You have to decide what's most critical, what's very important because it does tangible results for you, and then what's everything else. You know, I think there's tons of waste in the budget. We've found lots of waste, and I think that one of the things we should do is we start, again, funding to our priorities, which are things around education, public safety, and making the city work for the people who live here, not just the people who run it. I think, again, $80 million in overspending in the schools. The state sent us a bill for $80 million. That's going to cost $6 million out of our budget every year now for the 20 years. That's $120 million that we have less to spend in our budget because we had things like drapery consultants and other problems here in the city. And so I pledge that we won't raise taxes during this time, during the first year, which we could get there through this prioritization.
Thank you. Robert Lee, 30 seconds.
Could you repeat that question again, please?
Sure. In the city's current budget year, there are several million dollars in savings designated to come from labor negotiations and other areas. If those don't come through, or if any number of things go wrong, the city could easily be facing another deficit this year. If that's the case, would you raise taxes to cover that deficit, or would you cut? And if you would cut, where would you cut?
Okay, first of all, I want to say that I don't believe in privatization. That, I just want to say we will not, New Haven people won't lose jobs. And second, I wanted to say if I was mayor, we wouldn't be in this predicament to be asking a question of that magnitude, of years of being in service and being in the black and being in the red. After 18 years, if we're not in the black by now, we ain't never gonna get in the black. I believe if I was the mayor of New Haven, we wouldn't be in a budget like that. We overspent, been oversued, overspent. You know, our ship is sinking in the water, and I believe that I just will not put people on the street to make the budget right.
Thank you. Anthony Dawson.
Well, what I would do is just reprioritize our priorities in the city. I would definitely look at all the programs that currently exist. You know, people in the city, as I went door to door, talked about cronyism in the city. People that have jobs that don't necessarily deserve them because they were appointed by this administration. I have to look at those individuals that we could do without those jobs. Some of the administrators in the Board of Education that are getting these high salaries but producing children that are not quality and well-rounded. We have to look at those kinds of situations. I would definitely not raise taxes while cronyism is going on in the city.
Thank you. Mayor DeStefano.
Sure, thanks. We've run a budget deficit, a budget surplus every year I've been mayor, except for 2002 when John Rowland cut the budget in the middle of the year. We'll close fiscal year 11 as well with a surplus. That said, the most important thing we can do to ensure no new taxes is to get it from growth in the grand list. New Haven had the largest grand list growth in the state of Connecticut this past year because we've invested smartly and where we're competitive around eds and meds and the business that come out of that. The reset we're going to need is on expenditures, on pensions, and on health care, and having plans for municipal employees like the private sector. And the challenge next year is going to be with property revaluation. As you may know, the state mandates property revaluation next year, and there's going to be a shift, and we need to be concerned about how we are going to manage that for our residents.
Thank you. Clifton Graves.
Well, in our platform, we call for a task force on fiscal responsibility. First thing we would do, we would hit the ground running. We call for a 10% across the board cut for anyone making over $100,000, including the mayor. And yes, well, me, yeah, well, me. I will be, yeah, I will be, yeah. Does that count against my time?
No. You got another hour.
Anyway, 10% across the board cut for everyone making over $100,000, and we would go to the Board of Ed and to the school administrators union, and ask them to do in kind, to do likewise. We at least encourage that in any event. But also, as part of this fiscal responsibility task force, we look at conducting a forensic audit and right away to find out exactly what the state of the finances are in New Haven, and call on expertise. The Yale School of Management, the schools of businesses at UNH, at Gateway, at Quinnipiac, at Albertus, to come together, as well as folk like Marvin Linder and Carlton Highsmith. We get people with expertise in business, and Tony Resigno from the Chamber of Commerce, so we can figure this thing out.
Good. I gave you a little extra there.
You did. Thank you.
Okay. Jeff Karikis, 30 seconds. Did you get the question? Okay, I'm sorry. And Zingashani has a question for Robert Lee.
Mr. Lee, we're in the midst of a budget crunch and a school reform drive in New Haven. How will you find ways to improve education without increasing education spending?
Well, first of all, I just want to commend, we spent so many millions of dollars in the school in making new schools around the city of New Haven. I wish it could have been spent more in helping these kids to learn. I'd rather see a kid come out with a 4.0 grade average in a raggedy school than every time I turn it around, we're behind. I promise you, if I'm elected mayor, we won't be the 4th highest in crime. If we're going to be the 4th highest, it's going to be a Maastricht test. Or I will be looking at that young lady in Washington that said no business, Chin, and bring her in, and you see what tactics she used to improve our school system. Because right now, our kids are not learning, and we live in beautiful buildings, and that's what it's all about. It's about education at the end of the day. Our kids must learn.
Thank you very much. Anthony Dawson, would you like the question repeated, or you're cool? Yes. Loudly.
We're in the midst of a budget crunch and a school reform drive. How will you find ways to improve education in New Haven without increasing education spending?
Well, first of all, as I talked about with this administration appointing administrators in the Board of Education, I would definitely narrow those administrators down. They're getting paid big money, and yet 50% of our children are dropped out, and those are the ones that are really committing the crime because they have not been trained properly. I would definitely make sure that the children, they really want help. They want structured help in this city. And with the 50%, the Mayor Promised New Haven program is just the cream of the crop. It's not the 50% that's being dropped out of the school system. They're just funneling all over the city.
Thank you. Mayor DeStefano?
Sure. New Haven kids performed at 2.5 times the rate of growth of the state average this past year in the CMTs, an extraordinary result. Fact is, in this building, every senior that graduated from here is going on to college from this school. There are not huge numbers of administrators. Let's be truthful. Judy Puglisi here has 1 assistant principal in this building. And if folks think that Kermit Carolina over at Hill House with 1,000 kids, 1,500 parents, 300 staff is overstaffed, they don't get it. And I'll say one other thing. We should be proud of these school facilities. We should absolutely be proud that our kids have world-class labs, that they're able to have pre-kindergarten and full-time kindergarten spaces in their schools.
Thank you,
It is the best investment we could make. And the fact is, this $40 million building cost the city $3 million, and it's worth every dollar we invested in it for these kids.
Thank you. Cliff Graves, you got 30 seconds.
Well, first I think, if we look at the school budget, I think that there is room for certainly an analysis and certainly reassignment and certainly reallocation of resources. And certainly if we look at what happened to Clemente School, with all due respect, we brought in this group, Renaissance out of Maryland, with not much of a track record, paying them $500,000, I believe, a year. And we have 133 people, at least, administrators, making over $100,000 on our books. Why couldn't 2 or 3 or 4 of them been reassigned to Clemente, as opposed to bringing an outside group with no track record to speak of? So again, how we look at spending, how we allocate our resources is a critical issue as we go forward.
Thank you. Jeffrey Karikis.
A generation of kids without an education is completely unacceptable. Why did only 40% of Hill House and Cross students who started 9th grade graduate this year? Why would the Cross class of 2012, why did it start with 657 kids looking to graduate only 309? I'm glad that John has finally decided to back school reform after 18 years. Why not 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago? We need real reformers reforming our schools, not the same people who've been responsible for years of failed results. We need to make sure the money's spent in the classroom, not on a bloated Board of Ed. We need to hold principals accountable. We need to have more principals like Kim Johnsky at Fairhaven School who transformed the school in 1 year.
Thank you. Robert Lee, you're up. Oh, you got the question. Okay, and Zinga Shania has a question for...
For the man.
No, for Anthony Dawson.
Oh. Okay. Continuing on the education trend, Roberta Clemente Leadership Academy has become the first public school in town to have private for-profit management. Is this a good idea, and why not, if it's not?
It's a terrible idea, and there's people here that was in that process, and when they tried to get the information about how that process was working from the community, they were shut out. They were not in the participating process. The decision was made in the mayor's office, and the community was told what to do, and we don't know very much about it other than there's an outside agency that has the possibility of making a contribution to the mayor's campaign contribution list based on doing services, because they, like Cliff said, they have no good track record in terms of what services they have provided to other people, and they're just here in New Haven making some money, and we don't know where that money is going to go or whose pocket or campaign contribution list it will go to.
Mayor DeStefano, I'm going to ask you to stick to 30 seconds about Clemente.
Yes.
Well, I heard a lot of talk about how important it is to serve these kids, and yet what I'm hearing is about the adults that run the building. The issue for us shouldn't be the adults in the building. The issue should be the results that the kids get in the test. Renaissance is the second school. We brought in Domus this past year to run a school. They had extraordinary results over at Domus. This should be a community that is willing to try to do new things in order to better serve these kids. This is something the AFT, the Teachers Federation, the School Administrators Association supports, and at its core is a focus that the expectation these kids can and will do better. And we shouldn't be afraid to bring someone in from the outside to do that if they do it better. Why not?
Okay.
Cliff Graves.
Because he says Domus is, but Domus is being
Okay,
run
we'll
by
get- okay.
a not-for-profit,
Cliff
so
Graves.
there's a difference.
Okay, people can.
Okay.
Cliff Graves, you got 30 seconds.
Well, I have no problem with innovation and trying new things if the same things aren't working. But at the same time, the big issue here, I think, if we look at the Renaissance issue, was the lack of transparency. That was a big issue from day one, the lack of transparency in the process, and the fact that, again, the lack of a track record, a viable track record that you can look to in terms of the success. And I think we owe our children more than that. Yes, we do owe our children more than that, our parents more than that. And I think after years of falling short, to go that route, I think was just the wrong decision, quite frankly.
Thank you. Jeff Karikis, you got 30 seconds.
I actually agree with the mayor on this point. We've had a generation of kids who've been failed by our current school system. We still have the same leadership responsible for that. That we need to change. But we do, since we failed these kids, we need to make sure that we don't any longer. We need to try everything that's possible. We need to try every model. And I actually commend him for trying to do that. And privatization should have been more transparent, like Clifton had mentioned, but we need to make sure that we are trying things to actually educate these kids, not just provide a comfortable environment for the people who run the schools.
Thank you. Robert Lee.
I just want to say that I think this thing with Roberta Clemente was a catastrophe financially because of the way we have complained about our budget. I think that if we're going to bring an outside source in to run our schools in New Haven, then when we're paying teachers already to run the source, there's a serious problem inside the Board of Education. I think that when the mayor talks about these particular schools are doing good, I think that's a good thing. But when you come here today and you talk to me, and you can't tell me all the schools are doing good, you're lacking. All the kids. I have a policy. We all ride, but none of us ride at all. All our kids must be educated. Not one school, not two schools, all the schools.
Thank you very much. We're set, right? Abby Smith has a question for Mayor DeStefano.
Mayor, several of the candidates who are challenging you have said that they support the idea of establishing term limits for the mayor's seat and the Board of Aldermen. What do you think of the idea of term limits? Is there a benefit, and is there a reason why we shouldn't do it?
I think New Haven has figured out pretty quick when they don't like mayors that they have, and you could ask Mayor Logue about that, and Mayor Guida, who were all turned out of office. I think this goes to this too long argument, and I don't know. I sort of feel like the challenger here because I get criticized when I want to bring in folks from the outside to run the schools. I get criticized, I guess, when we try to do a new labor agreement with the labor unions and say we need to reset health care and pension plans. We can't do that. That we can't look at privatizing some services. Quite honestly, every other building in the city is cleaned by private services. So, I mean, I find it kind of striking that that some of the concerns about changes are actually saying we have to keep things the way they are. I think the voters in New Haven are pretty smart. They figure this thing out. They'll figure this election out however they do, and I think we should all trust them.
Thank you very much. Cliff Graves, 30 seconds.
Oh, yes, I support charter reform. I think I'm in favor of term limits. I think we need to look at either a fully elected or a hybrid board of education as part of charter reform as well. And I think we need to also look at curtailing or trimming down the Board of Alderpersons. I think, quite frankly, with all due respect to participatory democracy and our wars, I think it gets to be cumbersome, quite frankly, as we've seen in recent history, in terms of getting things done. So, again, I'm in favor of charter reform and certain term limits, absolutely.
Thanks. 1 second to spare on that one. Jeff Creaky, 30 seconds.
Jeff can take it.
A mayor for life, according to the thousands of supporters that we've talked to over the past 2 weeks, is unacceptable. You know, when we mention term limits, people's eyes light up. You know, 8 years is good enough for the president, it's good enough for the mayor. Because we have a system that doesn't have term limits, John has been able to relegate the Board of Aldermen to be basically a rubber stamp. This is because he's consolidated power across the city for decades and run the city the way it's my way or the highway. You know, I don't want to be mayor for life, and neither should he. 8 years is good enough for the president, good enough for me, and it should be good enough for him. He got 18 and wants 20. Give him an inch and he wants a mile.
Thank you very much. Robert Lee, you got 30 seconds to weigh in on term limits.
Well, I think of all the gentlemen here in this panel here, I was the first one to suggest term limits. I believe that mayors should only serve a limited amount of time. I believe if our great president could serve term limits, so can the mayor or office, you know, have a term limit. I think that if you can't get your job done in a couple of terms, then you're in the wrong business. That's just what I believe in. I believe that as effective mayor, you need to be able to get your job done, pass it on to another person, and let them run the city instead of being a dictatorship. We have a dictatorship, and it's not working.
Thank you. Anthony Dawson, term limits.
I believe in term limits. However, I would also let the voters be a part of the charter revision and make sure that we do a number of things like the Board of Aldermen numbers as well as the term limits for the mayor. You know, the question is with this administration is after being there 18 years, what more would you need 2 more years to do that you didn't do in 18 years? You know, John has done a good job with some things, but some things he really needs to admit that we need to correct the problem and move forward.
Thank you very much. Uma Ramaya, you got Cliff, right? Yeah. Uma Ramaya has a question for Cliff Graves.
Mr. Graves, what do you see the effect of the New Haven Promise Scholarship Program as being a decade from now?
I'm sorry.
The question was, what do you see the effect of New Haven Promise being a decade from now?
Well, actually, I don't know, quite frankly, because I'm not. I think the way that the program is set up is only going to be in existence for another several years. I think about 4 to 6 years, I believe. But that being said, I think the New Haven Promise program is a baby step in the right direction. We should all encourage any program that raises the bar and sets expectations high for our children, encourage them to go to college. But the harsh reality of it is this: the majority of our children, sadly, are not going to college. Some don't want to go to college. So we should have, so if we make a promise to maybe 5 to 7, 8% of our kids, what promises are we making to the other 92%, the other 95% who may not be a part of, or have a good part of the New Haven promise? So therefore, we need to raise the bar in terms of, raising the expectation levels, improving the education level of our kids across the board, but also we need to look at, I'm glad the mayor finally came around to this in the last couple of months, and we've supported and advocated for more emphasis on vocational education and training. I think we can train.
No, finish your sentence.
We can train our children to be plumbers and electricians, computer technicians, auto mechanics, and they can be viable citizens and taxpayers in our community.
Thank you very much. Jeffrey Karikis, you have 30 seconds on Promise to New Haven.
New Haven Promise is a great contribution from Yale for New Haven kids. But John left us with a bill for $80 million. $80 million. This is overspending on things like drapery consultants. The state said, no, we're not going to pay these. These are ineligible costs. That's going to cost us $120 million to pay back. We're going to have to borrow that money. $4 million in total compared to $120 million. That's a lot less than the $6 million that we're going to have to pay each year now for the $20 million. I think that we should have had the priority of actually making sure that money could work for the people here, the students here, instead of wasting that money on drapery consultants.
Thank you. Robert Lee, New Haven Promise.
I think New Haven Promise is a great thing. And I have been around the city and I talked about it. One of my problems with New Haven Promise is the kids that they're saying they have to have a 3.0 average. I think it's a great program, but you have to look into our communities, mothers. A lot of our kids are C students. I like to see that thing be strategized differently, because it has to start affecting kids with C grades, because we have more kids with C grades. And I want to give them the promise to go to college and not to be on the street. So if someone telling you got to be a 3.0 or a 3.5, all our kids are not like that. And please don't tell me just because you're a C+ student, you're not smart enough to go to college. So let's give them a chance too. Let's make this thing where it affects all of our
community. Thank you very much, Mr. Lee.
Take our kids off the streets that want to
Anthony
be on
Dawson, 30 seconds, New Haven Promise.
New Haven Promise is a good program. Many people are encouraged by it. However, the 50% dropout is what I'm concerned about. Those are the youngsters and the young people that are out here with no basic skills, that are probably the ones that are really dealing with or making the quality of life issues around New Haven a little bit difficult at this point. I would have to have another program to assist us with this whole thing of the fourth dangerous city in the country. There is a reason for that. There are children that are being uneducated for over several years, and they're out there with no skills and nothing to do but cause trouble.
Thank you. Mayor DeStefano, New Haven Promise in 10 years.
It's a great program. It's our future as a city. It's what we should be proud of most of all, that we have an aspiration in this city that every child has the talent and capacity to go on to college. And it says something else. It's not a handout. You've got to work for it. You've got to get a B average. You've got to get 90% attendance. And it is for kids. Those kids that were greeting you as came in were doing their community service for what? New Haven Promise. Those are our kids. We should be full-throated in support of this program, these kids. And it's a help to parents, because it's a chance for us to go to parents and say, you work with your kids. You inspire them to go to college. We can help you do this. We can't be their parent, but we can help you in their job. Why we as a community in this panel shouldn't feel powerful and good.
Thank you. Just to be fair, I want to allow all candidates to finish a sentence at the end of 30, and I apologize if I'm being rude. I don't want to cut you off, and I appreciate that you all came here to be in the debate. So it's nothing personal. Okay, everyone speak. Yeah. Do you have a question for Stephanie Polino has a question. For Jeffrey Karikis.
Do you support the current plan to start charging for metered street parking downtown from 7 p.m. to midnight? If not, how else would you raise $1.4 million a year or cut it from the city budget?
Again, the budget's a mess. We're on the brink of bankruptcy, and that's totally unacceptable. When this mayor is overspent and he hires his friends, we have tremendous waste. And because of that, we're in a bad shape. We have also we've underfunded our pension and health care obligations to our retirees. We're at risk of defaulting our promises to those people. And so what do we need to do? We need to find every way to find money. And you know what? People are going to balk about the parking meter. And I actually support that, because we need to actually get money from anywhere we can. And right now, in the evenings, we get a lot of people coming from the region to New Haven. We provide regional benefits, but we don't always get the money from the region that we need. So this is one way to get that. And yes, it's going to be controversial, but they're going to make it so that the meters can actually be paid for a longer period of time, so you don't have to run out there every 20 minutes. So that's a good thing, but we're on the bankruptcy, and that's a problem. We have tons of unfunded liabilities that we need to deal with. We need to keep and honor our promises to the workers. They've worked their whole entire working life. We need to make sure that money's there, and right now the mayor has not funded it adequately, and you guys are at risk.
Thank you very much. Robert Lee, you have 30 seconds on this question.
As far as the meters are concerned, I don't think the meters are our problem today. I think our problem is the people with this administration, how they abuse the power of the money that we have used, we entrusted to them, and they have twisted it and turned it, and I don't think selling the meters over to Yale for a certain amount of $1 million and losing hundreds of millions in return, like we have did with some of our investments we did. I think it's a terrible idea. And I also want to say that just to reiterate on the You Promise thing, that there are mothers out there that are single moms that can't always be with their child, can't do that, and they need to give that kid a chance. When you say you promise, it's good, but don't tell me that kid that got a single mom that's doing the best he can't go to college.
Mr. Lee, thank you very much.
Because he ain't got it like everybody else.
Okay, Tony Dawson, 30 seconds.
Paul, I just think that the whole notion that, after 7 o'clock we have to pay for folks to go downtown and to invest in our businesses and then have to pay to park there, it's just not a way that I would like to do business in New Haven. I would like to find another way to raise the money that we need to move the city forward. I just think that the meter situation it was a controversial issue and it sort of got slidden in there. But I think that the businesses have to feel bad about this whole thing of paying while you're eating dinner downtown.
Thank you. John DeStefano, 30 seconds.
Just so we're all clear, United States government got downgraded. Some of our area towns did. Our credit rating was affirmed in January the same. And also, as you know, Jeff, because I appointed you to the Financial Review Advisory Commission, the city, every year I was mayor, has made the actuarial recommended contributions to the pension fund. You know that was not the case, of course, under my predecessor. So I'd ask you at least to reflect that. The second thing I'd say about this is we're missing a point here, is the way we are going to make this budget work as it has worked and is working now is continue to grow jobs and businesses in this city off our ed and med base in commercialization of science and research and around a service economy. That's why we led the state in grantless growth the last 2 years.
Thank you, Mayor DeStefano. 30 seconds, Clifton Graves.
No, I'm against the decision by the city to extend the parking hours to midnight and for pay. I know we need new revenue streams and we need to find ways to get more money into the city, but I think this is a bad decision in terms of anti-business. But we have to be creative and innovative in our approach. And again, goes back to what we talked about at this task force on fiscal responsibility to find out exactly, where the bodies are buried, and exactly where get a better handle on through a forensic audit, where the monies are, so we can and reallocate spending and make better decisions.
Thank you very much. This question is for Robert Lee. Mr. Lee, can you name an interest group that you would say no to as mayor? And if so, what would you say no to them about?
An interest group. Well, we all know Yale is our biggest employer, right? And I wouldn't say no to them on everything, but I think I would say no to them on some of the things. I think they need to be more responsible to the community because this is community, it's New Haven. They thrive off these New Haven citizens. I think Yale needs to be more responsible than hiring people in our community and making sure that we are partnership. And I would say no to them on the parking meters that we said yes to. I would say no to them on the high rises that they're trying to do until this community be a part of what they're trying to do.
Thank you very much. Tony Dawson, 30 seconds. Let's hear a no.
I would say no to Yale with the new residential improvements that they like to do. If in fact they would come together as a university so that we can learn from our mistakes with the school construction here. There's a number of young people that did not get jobs, that did not get apprenticeship jobs within the school construction. With Yale building this $1 billion corporation, building a new residential program, I would hope and pray that this administration, while he's here, would organize with them to try to make sure that the apprenticeship program that we didn't take advantage of in New Haven school system, we could take advantage at Yale and give some of these young people off the corners and into the jobs in Yale.
Thank you. Mayor DeStefano, you've been mayor. You can answer it either past tense, present tense, or future tense.
You know, this is a complex city, so folks come from all different places around the world. They have all different life experiences, and they have all different challenges and opportunities in their lives. And I think it's really important as part of leadership, and I'm only part of leadership in my job, to make sure you give a fair listen and engage people. I think there's extraordinary energy in this community. I mean, I've seen it around the cycling community. Chris Randall's here, Land Trust has done some extraordinary things. People take ownership and accept responsibility. What I say no to is the kind of anger and hatred I saw when we did the resident ID cards, to the kinds of angers that divide us. That's what I say no to.
And then Cliff Graves, let's hear a no.
My no would be to any entity, you know, Yale, and I don't want to jump on the Yale, beat up on Yale bandwagon, but any entity that does not share the philosophy of shared sacrifice and shared responsibility. So that's public sector, private sector, again inclusive of Yale, who doesn't sit down, who not willing to sit down at the table with us and try to figure out a way and provide services that would benefit the city of New Haven. So if you're not on the same plane with us, if you're not buying into that same spirit of shared sacrifice and shared responsibility, then I will say no to you. Absolutely.
Thank you. Jeffrey Karikis, no.
No to criminals, and yes to real jobs for real New Haveners. You know, economic growth is really, to me, about real jobs for people here in the city. It's not just about grand list growth. I'll be happy with growth when we actually have jobs for people here. You know, 360 State Street was a great project, Science Park, Yale New Haven. Some of those things are really great for New Haven in terms of economic growth. But those are Hail Mary passes. The unofficial employment rate, the official employment rate is 13.1%. And the mayor in the recent NPR news report, I guess about a year ago, said it's 18 to 20%. You know, real New Haven jobs is what I would say yes to.
Thank you. We asked you, Robert. Okay, we're moving on to Anthony Dawson. The next question. Mr. Dawson, who has been the most successful mayor in New Haven history and why?
Well, the most successful one is not, in my mind, the most successful one is not elected yet. And that would be me.
Thank you very much. John DeStefano.
Well, on Saturday, the most successful mayor was Luisa DeLauro of Worcester Square. A bunch of us were at that event. I think there are all kinds of leaders in our community. And I think of Kellyanne Day, who works in the Hill doing some great things, the folks at Hill Health Center in your neighborhood, Katrina in Fairhaven Health Clinic. I think there are lots of folks in their neighborhoods who do extraordinary things. What Cliff did with the mentoring program has been a great thing in a lot of neighborhoods. You know, it's not about a leader. It's about people who see their self-interest in one another and understanding that we all share something, and we're all lifted up by that.
Thank you. Cliff Graves. Cliff Graves, best mayor in New Haven history.
Well, I think that's a difficult question to answer, quite frankly, because, you know, everyone, it depends on how you define success. I mean, I think that if you go through our history, which is a long and lengthy one, I mean, different mayors in that different eras, you know, did great things for the city in terms of moving us forward in terms of housing, economic development, and growth and diversity. So, and somewhere along the line, at some point, in spite of all the criticism that we heap on the man sitting next to me, his name may be there somewhere in terms of good things. A few good things he's done, but I think depending on how you define success, quite frankly.
Okay, thank you. Jeffrey Karikis.
Good try.
Yeah, you know, a successful mayor is someone who listens to the people here in the city, you know, and builds coalition. We've actually represented in our petition drive from people all across the city, from Westville to West River, from the Hill to New Hallville, East Shore to East Rock, and Farnham Courts to Fairhaven. We have done that because the city's more successful when you bring people together and actually have a city that works. You know, an unsuccessful mayor is someone who might fire staff, employees for speaking to the press, or publicly demeaning and humiliating your spokesperson in public.
Thank you very much. Robert Lee, do you have a name for us? Most successful mayor in history?
Well, the most successful mayor to me would be a mayor, myself, like Tony said, Well, being mayor, I think that when the kids are coming out of school and they're proud and they can stand up and say, Mom, I got that A and I got that B in class. When we can have a budget that's in the black. When the community is not saying no more, enough is enough. When they start to say, I love my mayor, not I want to get rid of my mayor. That's what I think a good mayor will be.
Okay, thank you. The next question, Stephanie Paulino has a question for Mayor Stefano.
One person, though.
Should we have more officers covering neighborhoods on foot or bike rather than in cars? If yes, where would the money come from? If not, why not?
New Haven has 420 sworn officers. That is more than at any time except for 2 years in the last 20. Last night's incident, the person who called in the shooting was a police officer who was right around the corner. I think the critical thing is to undertake community policing as we've done it. 9 police districts. Thad Reddish, who works in New Hallville, grew up in New Hallville. His parents still live in New Hallville. He works with the same group of 24 officers. Again, I leave it to Thad Reddish to decide how he wants to deploy his officers, and he has the opportunity to decide where he wants to request overtime from the chief of the department for crime suppression or drug intervention activities. I think if we're going to be true to this idea of community policing, the idea ought to be to let these bosses and officers in the neighborhood who are working with their management teams to decide deployment. And if they think it's on foot, it should be on foot. If they think it should be on bike, it should be on bike. If they think it should be in a patrol car, that's how it should be.
Thank you. Cliff Graves, more cops on the street or on foot, or more on bike, or more in car, and where would the money come from?
Definitely on the street and on bikes. One complaint we've heard throughout the city is that in spite of the best efforts being put forth, that many communities don't know the police officers, and there's some antagonism there and resentment across the board in some cases. So we have to figure out a way by reassignment and redeployment of our resources to have more cops on the street and on the bike, so the neighbors know them and they know the children and people in the community. And again, the resources would basically come from, again, looking at our budget, looking at how we spend our resources within the police department, within city government, and find ways to make that happen. It's about quality of life, and this is an important issue.
Thank you. Jeff Karikis, on foot, on bike, or in car, or more?
I think it depends. I think that we need to have more cops on foot and bike in the toughest neighborhoods so they can actually build a relationship with the people who live here. I have a come back home program that I propose to bring cops to live back in the city, so we'll have more like Officer Threddish. And I think that we also need to have no crime is too. See, actually, New York City, what they did is they had a comp stat. They said they reduced their murder rate by 80% by looking at data and doing a data-driven model, and then actually holding the officers accountable. If you run a department in that area, you have to get the results or you step down.
Thank you. Robert Lee, foot, bike, car.
I believe that if I become mayor, we're going to have 24/7 policing. When I was a young man, my Uncle Jeff was a commander in the police department. Some of you people might know my Uncle Jeff. He was one of the great cops. One of the cops with Buffalo, Odell, Owen, all of them guys. They all knew the kids in the neighborhood. These police officers need to know these mothers. They need to know these grandmothers. They don't. We will have 24 policing like they do in New York. You will walk in the snow. You will walk in the rain. If you are a young police officer, I believe all the police officers that are of age should be driving in the cars and supervising. But these young police officers, they need to know their communities. You need to know the moms and pops by first name when you're walking down the street. The cops, the kids should be able to say, I know Officer Joe, or something like that, not say cop or some derogatory
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
And that curbs violence.
Anthony Dawson, foot, bike, or car?
I would like to bring back the community-based policing where the officers could walk. But also, let me just say this. The mayor has to take some ownership to this in terms of the union negotiation when he laid off 16 police officers for political aberration and then tried to bring them back. He put our families' lives at jeopardy when he laid off 16 police officers. It showed the other unions that he would lay off police officers. It would just put our families at risk. He put our community and our businesses at risk. There are armed robberies going on he's not talking about. There's armed robberies going on right now in our communities, and you're going to lay off 16 police officers. That was not the place where we need to make the cut.
Thank you, Mr. Dawson. Uma Ramaya, has a question for Clifton Graves.
Hi again.
No?
In a letter to Democratic Town Committee Chair Susan Voigt, you wrote, "This is not participatory democracy. This is incumbent, biased insanity." What exactly is it that you think is wrong with the endorsement process?
Well, that letter was based on the fact that in this current election cycle, as you can see, there are several candidates running for mayor. And while I know that the way the ward committee structure is set up is primarily to endorse all candidates for all the persons, when there are mayoral candidates, and this is, again, a participatory democracy, at least in principle, that should be supported and enhanced. In this case, in this last election cycle, there were several ward committee meetings being held on the same night and at the same time. So it was virtually impossible for the challenges up here in front of you to make these meetings. And I think that was disrespectful to our fellow citizens and fellow taxpayers and residents, our neighbors in different areas of the city. And I think it undermines, again, the whole principle of participatory democracy. So we sent that letter in the hope that it wasn't being personally critical of Susan Boyd, being critical of the process and encouraging her as the chair to look at this process and certainly tweak it where it needs to be tweaked. Again, if we talked earlier about the young people across, if we're going to encourage and support and be a part of participatory democracy, and we need to set a better example than we set this past year.
Thank you. Jeffrey Kariki's insanity question mark.
So the town committee has one job, ensure fair elections for Democrats, and it didn't do that. We are the first time to have 7 votes for myself for the nomination process, and 8 votes abstained. They didn't vote for the mayor. I think that's fantastic, but it's not far enough. We had access issues to the committees. The lists are private. A lot of people don't understand how the ward committees work. You know what? Because of this system, this confusion, and not helping to ensure a fair democratic process, the mayor's been able to take the Board of Aldermen and turn them into a rubber stamp. They're not able to be independent. We need a fair checks and balance, the real check and balance of the mayor's power.
Thank you. Robert Lee, 30 seconds.
I think the town committee works when it's a real town committee, but right now we don't have one. I think that everybody that went there, and I gotta agree with Cliff, it was a forest, because a young lady named Barbara, she's a Democratic in the 11th Ward, was the only Democratic who ran. This is a no-brainer. She's supposed to get the nominating seat, but she didn't, because of the political bureaucrats that went on with John and Susie and them. And that's disrespectful to a senior lady that tried to get on board. I think this town committee needs to be revamped, and we need a new person to run it.
Thank you. Anthony Dawson.
Hey, this town committee goes back with me all the way back to Art Barberi. And we had to make changes and we had to demand things back then, and we still have to do it today. But I would say this: after serving this city for 16 years as an alderman and not be able to go to all 4 corners of the city to represent my views, it's just sad. If you're going to tell the children that they got to start mediation and talk about things, then we must lead by examples as adults. And we did not do that in the democratic process, and the chairwoman has to take the responsibility of it because she's the chairwoman.
Thank you. And finally, Mayor DeStefano.
The town committee chairs are elected officials. They're elected by the ward committees, and if someone is unhappy with the ward committee election, as happens frequently, there are primaries for that. And I appreciate Jeff's comments about how they're controlled, but 18th Ward voted for me, not you, and yet you got their 2 votes. Hey, that's fair. I don't have a problem with that. Maybe I do have a problem with Joe Lieberman thing. I'm running as a Democrat. I think it happens to mean something to run as a Democrat. I'm going to support who wins the Democratic primary because the party and the values and the things it stood for means something, and I think it's good to be intellectually honest to reconcile what we do with what we say.
Thank you very much. Abby Smith has a question for Jeff Kariki.
What is one innovative or creative new idea you have to generate revenue for the city or find new savings in the budget?
So one of the things is that the very first time I ever went to and spoke before the Board of Aldermen was a list of ideas for revenues and expenses. Very first thing we did, we came out with suggestions. I wanted to be helpful. They didn't listen to us, got me more involved, fired me up a bit. And now I'm running for mayor. But one of the interesting ideas, we need to follow the money. you want to know where the money's going, that's the way you can actually control cost. One way to do that is we need transparency. And how we're going to get there, this is a new idea. Publish the city's check register online. Every penny that comes in and out of the city government goes on the website on a weekly basis.
Thank you. Robert Lee, new and innovative idea, please.
I think the new and innovative ideas is to go green, to be more green in New Haven. We do so much wasteful spending downtown, and if we continue to go green and get more innovative ideas, we will be able to start to save money. I think that we have wasted a lot of money downtown, a lot of things that we don't need to do. So, you know, to continue to go green and you know, continue to structure our town where it's not only going green and saving lives also with it.
Thank you very much. Tony Dawson, new and innovative.
Well, what I would do is just say to John, thank you for your 18 years. And we need to have a commission that just looks at where we're at with our monies and look at all the money and where it's at and let the people know where we stand right now. He says $53 million. I think we're going to be close to $100 million, even recently with the firemen's money that we had to pay out, $5 million. I don't know how much more we have to pay for the city, for their lawyers. We just need a transparent government. We need to get City Hall back to the citizens of New Haven and know where our money's at and where we're spending it at.
Thank you. Mayor DeStefano, new innovative idea.
I think it's good to look at having folks who use services pay for them. And what do I mean by that? The whole region uses Tweed. The goal now, and we've got a bill passed, allow us to put Tweed under Tweed Airport Authority. Let them pay for that services. We spend $1.1 million a year on shelter services. We do it because we're compassionate and we don't think anybody should be outside, but frankly, I know, as you may know, that we have direct discharges from Department of Corrections from all over the state to the city of New Haven. We provide a third of the, virtually all the affordable housing in the region. That's good. That's a decent and right thing to do. We ought to support these populations and the needs they have.
Thank you very much. Cliff Graves.
Well, we mentioned earlier about this task force on fiscal responsibility. Part of its charge would be to come up with new and innovative ideas to bring new revenue streams into our city. We have to be inventive and innovative, but also I think it may be worth our while to revisit the old residency requirements. I know that these issues were struck down in past years, but again, given it's a new day and a new time, and I think we need to look at that residency requirements. Jeff talked about a come back home, which is part of the reason I want to hire him as my budget director when I become mayor. But I do think that new revenue streams, but the residency requirement for police officers, firefighters, teachers, new employees over a certain level needs to be revisited and looked at as a way of bringing in funds to the city.
Okay, so we now have someone got a job tonight. Job creation in New Haven in a recession for the final question of the night. And Zinga Shani has a question for Robert Lee.
Okay, Mr. Lee, we are all concerned about quality of life issues and safety in our neighborhoods. One of the problems we have are some abandoned properties in the long process of foreclosure. What can or should the city do to deal with banks, mortgage companies, and other out-of-state owners who have abandoned the upkeep of properties that are stuck in these foreclosure process for years?
I think we need to go to these banks and try to create an atmosphere. We look at the properties that we have in around the city that are abandoned in that, and get a partnership with these banks and these loans institutes that we can create jobs, construction for a lot of our people out there are crying for jobs right now today, and put some of these people into jobs and help to build houses that we see around the city that are seniors that's been there for 30 years and can't afford to get things fixed on their house. I think we need to utilize this and to help the community and create jobs. Go to these banks, build the institution with these banks, and do something with the abandoned houses around the city.
Thank you. Anthony Dawson.
Well, you know my background. I brought the first dollar house in New Haven at age 16. I think that we have young people that are on the corners. They can also purchase it with the right kinds of people and support services. I think that we should be able to take these abandoned houses and put them into a trust fund, which we have in New Haven, or the redevelopment agency, and then put an urban homestead program together and ask the banks and Yale University and other institutions in New Haven to contribute money so that there will be money that these folks will get without having to pay it back, a certain percentage of it, and do the urban homesteading program that I've had the house for 35 years and is paying taxes last year on it.
Thank you very much. John, just to recap, the question is how the city should deal with out-of-state lenders and others who own foreclosed upon properties or properties about to be foreclosed upon.
Nothing's worse than losing the house where you live with your family and you go home to every night. What we do in the city is before you buy a house in the city assisted program, you have to go through counseling. Can you afford it? Are you going to be able to make the payments? Understanding your obligations. 2 years ago, we created a program called ROOF. 2 years ago, what ROOF did is went to every household in the city that had a variable rate mortgage, because variable rate resets were the problem 2 years ago we were seeing. What we've done in that is counsel people before they get into trouble as to what to do.
Thank you.
You've seen a huge decrease in foreclosures coming down because banks have finally getting it that they shouldn't be owning these properties. Let people work it out.
Thank you very much. Clifton Graves, foreclosure.
Well, again, I think none of us has a monopoly on good ideas. I think Tony's idea about urban homesteading is good. If we tie that into maybe new hires and we'll sit down with the banks and the lending institutions and try to figure out a way, and taking even some of Bob's idea, we can find a way to fix up these houses. Employ people unemployed, as carpenters or plumbers, what have you, have them fix up these houses, and then perhaps make them available to those new employees coming to the city, teachers, police officers, firefighters, and encourage that, and have a program in place by working with the banks and lending institutions. It has to be a partnership of sorts, a consortium of sorts, but folks have to buy into, again, shared sacrifice, shared responsibility.
Thank you very much. Jeffrey Karikas. Bring it home on foreclosure.
So the city itself foreclosed on initiated 429 foreclosures just this last year. That's the city itself. And why is that happening? Because people can't afford the taxes. Being a Democrat is about the middle class and working class and making sure that people could afford to live in the city. They're getting forced out of their homes by crazy taxes that have doubled in the last 7 years. That's under this mayor. And I think that, people are afraid to fix up their houses because the assessments go up, and they're afraid they're not going to be able to fix it up and afford the taxes. We need to also hold those banks and other large property owners accountable and make sure that they're fixing up their properties, because we shouldn't be afraid of them just because they're large campaign donors.
Thank you very much. Okay, we've completed the questioning portion. We now have final statements from candidates. I ask you to speak up because there's some trouble hearing in the back. You have 90 seconds. I'm going to ask you when the bell goes off to just complete the sentence you're in the middle of.
Have them stand up.
And why don't you stand up? Robert Lee, stand up. Give us 90 seconds. Goodbye talk. The mic doesn't pick up. Okay.
You want to give me a mic?
Just speak loud. Speak loud.
There's no mic.
No,
it doesn't pick up.
Doesn't work?
It doesn't pick up.
Okay, let me try to say this in 90 seconds. My name is Robert Lee, as we all heard. I've been married 33 years to the same woman. All my kids are by the same woman. Okay? Okay? All my kids are by the same woman. Okay? I believe now be serious. I believe great leaders, like our president I love so much, has a strong mate standing beside him. And I don't even want to say her name because we know who she is. I believe in order to lead this city, you must have a cellmate that stand with you that's strong. Okay? You must have a wife. You must have a partner to keep you where you need to be in times when there's disparity and you go in the house. I believe that I know the problems that's going on outside these walls because I grew up in this city as a kid. Okay? I seen the crime. My cousin, one of my nephews died in Eastern Circle when I was a kid. I know what the crime-ridden problems that we have in here. I went to these schools. I know what this is all about. I asked to be a mayor because I want to make change. I want to bring the history back to New Haven that was taken away from our kids. I want to take the money out of the pocket of people that don't believe here and put them back into New Haven. I want New Haven taxpayers to be like this and not like this. When New Haven start to pay taxes and it's like this, the taxes come down. When the people continue to come into our town and we give them jobs that don't live here and we pay for North Branford, Milford, all these places, our taxes continue to go up. And you know what happens? We decide to say, I'm getting out of New Haven, I'm moving. And I'm moving. We must be a city that says, no more. I paid taxes here for 30 years, and I live here, and I want to stay here because I love New Haven. under this administration is not happening. And it takes a community to make that happen, not just me. It's about we, not me.
Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Until we become we, me will never work.
Thank you. Jeffrey Kariki's final statement.
For the first time in a decade, New Haven has a real choice for who will run the city. It's historic. Despite 18 years in office, we have bloodshed in the streets today. Through poor education, we have lost an entire generation of children and sentenced them to a lifetime of poverty and problems. Our city is nearly bankrupt, and our real economic growth, measured in jobs for real people here in New Haven, stalled long ago. The question is, do you want more of that? Under my administration, we will plot a new course. No more patronage and cronyism. It's not who you know, it's about what you can do for people here in New Haven. It's not just about my ideas, it's about yours. It's about solutions and strategies. It's not about headlines, it's not about me, it's about you and your family, your loved ones. My platform is simple and direct. Education that works, run by real reformers, people with demonstrated results, effective policing that brings back safe streets, law and order, sustainable budget that is fair, honest, and balanced, that cuts the waste and creates funding pools that can be rechanneled to our spending priorities and citywide needs. Economic development that is not measured in buildings and grand list growth, but in how many jobs were created for people here in New Haven, how many small businesses opened up, and how fast 20% unemployment rate drops. My goal is full and fair employment for all who want it. My name is Jeffrey Karikas. I'm running for mayor of New Haven, and I humbly ask for your vote.
Thank you. Clifton Graves, final statement.
Good evening again. Let me thank, first of all, the co-sponsors of this event, and thank all of you, our fellow citizens, for coming out tonight. The Obama Initiative program that we run for the last couple of years, I had an 8th grader at Roberta Clemente School say to me, Mr. Graves, when I grew up, I wanted to be an inventor. I want to be an inventor. Isn't that great, John? I want to be an inventor. I want to invent things that haven't been invented before, take care of myself, take care of my family, take care of my community. But all I really want to do, Mr. Graves, is just make it to 18. All I really want to do is just make it to 18. Just last night, we had another child not make it to 18. Something's wrong with this paradigm, something's wrong with this picture. Not to just impact Dwight and Dixwell or the Hill or Fairhaven, it impacts East Rock and East Shore and Westville and Beaver Hills as well. We're all one city, and we need a leader that can bring us together. They come to have common solutions to some common problems. As I said throughout this campaign, New Haven is like a ship adrift in Long Island Sound, where the captain, albeit experienced, who apparently has lost his way. With the crew and passengers, that are anguished and angered, fearful and frustrated over the state of affairs. And if that weren't bad enough, this ship is leaking. You've heard it from all my colleagues here. It's leaking with a financial crisis, with concerns over education, and yes, it's leaking with a public safety and street violence concern. We have to plug the leaks. We have to change the captain. We got to change the direction of New Haven for the good of the whole, for the good of the order.
Mr. Graves.
Thank you so much. Clifton Graves, I'm running from there.
John DeStefano.
I want to thank you all for hosting, everybody who came out. I want to thank Robert and Jeff and Cliff and Tony for their service to the city. I also want to acknowledge my wife, Kathy DeStefano, who's here with me. Families are having a tough time in America and in Connecticut and the United States. I know they're having that tough time. The job of leadership is to make choices. I'm not running for mayor, I am mayor. So I've made choices about what we should do. Not what I say, but what I think we need to do. About job creation, about resetting pension and health care costs, and doing things that brings this community together. I've heard a lot of words tonight about too long and captains and things like that. You know, those are labels. And New Haven ought to be afraid of labels. I'll say this. We did resident ID cards I was a crazy liberal. That was the label. When I mediated the Yale strikes and got involved in card check and stood up for some things, some workers at the Cancer Center, I was pro-union. And then when I talked to our workforce and said we've got to do some things differently to preserve what we got, it was sort of anti-union. When I made a stand about what I think was fair for fire promotionals, I was accused of favoring one group.
Thank you.
And when some folks didn't get appointed, of favoring another group.
Thank you.
I do this job because it is a wonderful job, and I sincerely appreciate the energy and intention these folks do it. It is a wonderful job to connect in this extraordinary city.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you so much.
Anthony Dawson.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everyone for coming out, in particular the people that put this together. I'm a native of New Haven. I'm a product of the New Haven Public Schools. I'm not here to say what needs to be corrected about the Board of Education or the teachers and administrators there. They are good administrators, and there are people that are in the trenches that are working as like teachers. However, some of our good teachers need to be promoted up into our system and be rewarded just like our other departments. We have good men and women in the police department and fire department. And those folks need to be promoted from within. If you walk as a rookie around here in the city of New Haven, and you go from sergeant to lieutenant to captain, there is no reason why we cannot pick a chief. No matter what this chief's experience is in Chicago, I prefer a chief that lived next to me, that's been here with my families, and been here with other families in New Haven. That's how you get intelligence. Right now, when a new chief comes here, it takes a little time to get intelligence. It takes a little time for people to start really even respecting them, or her, or even giving them intelligence. So, but we have officers, and we're letting them go away. We are letting prime officers who've been here for many years just retire and go in the wind. These are experienced detectives that can be running these bureaus and making some serious cases and put these people behind bars who need to be responsible for what they're doing on the street. Can you imagine a couple times this year, people watching on the stairs, watching their families just run down and shot, and there's nothing they can do about it?
Thank you.
I've been seeing this for the last 28 years as a lieutenant at Yale New Haven Hospital. Back in the day, I said this. We're becoming the endangered species, and we need to be careful in the way that we're doing things. And if you elect me, I would hit the ground running and get this crime under control. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming out to the debate tonight. And thank you to Metropolitan Business Academy and the reporters who came present. And thanks most of all to our panel. Let's have a round of applause for 5 people who are willing to run for office.